We are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, August 18th. I have no idea. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We've got two slates today. We'll touch a little bit on the early out the gate, but we got a 10-gamer as the main. Be sure to hit that like button as you walk in the door, or digitally walk in the door at that. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Adam, how did your Tuesday work out for you?
Not great. Yeah, nothing. I had a lot of Alek Manoah, so my night got off to a bad start and just kept going that way. Didn't get it back on the night slate, so not a great one for me.
Whose night went worse, yours or Chris Bassett's?
Yeah, his. That was ugly.
That was bad. That was real bad. I clicked on him while I was sitting on the couch. We were just watching TV, and you hear that crack of the bat. You never want to hear the exact same crack again immediately, and that's exactly what it was like.
I saw it I saw it the first time with no sound and was like, oh, that's ugly. And then I turned the sound up. And as I did it, I was like, you're going to regret this. And it's nauseating.
No, apparently okay-ish right now. Like, he didn't lose an eye, was conscious leaving the field.
Yeah. Vision still 20/20, broke his cheekbone and upper jawbone surgery in 3 to 5 days. But they said everything else is fine.
Yeah, not ideal. So best wishes to Chris Bassett coming out of that bad boy. Brutal. Yeah. Tough one for Manoah yesterday. Rays went well, which I was happy about. Other than that, just kind of a weird slate. Not a lot of breakout performances. Pitching was bonkers. I mean, when I woke up this morning, I want to make sure that I get it right. I woke up this morning I always like to look at the pitching scoring and just see like who that we definitely weren't ever going to roster ended up playing well. And boy, oh boy, was that a list of teams yesterday. It was absolutely awful in terms of guys at the top. Did you have Eli Morgan as your highest scoring pitcher for yesterday?
No, definitely not.
Unbelievable. 6 innings, 8 Ks, 3 hits. Picks up the W. Logan Webb second. Our boy Sandy third. Look, DK, if you're going to use the live leaderboard, can we not merge the MLB stats with the Korean baseball stats, please? Because Anderson Franco having 26 fantasy points yesterday is not super relevant for what I'm trying to do. I looked at it and I was like, I don't even remember talking about him yesterday.
Who's he play for now?
Lot.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
Lotte.
Yeah, the abbreviation's lot. You're lucky it wasn't the opposite team. Otherwise, I was going to say Q, which I still don't know. But yeah, Eli Morgan at the top of the heap yesterday with 30 fantasy points was just not an outcome that we expected. That's baseball for you, everybody. That's baseball for you. And unfortunately for Chris Bassett, not the lowest scoring pitcher, thanks to your boy, Alex Manoah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not ideal. Negative 3.55 plus a pretty gnarly headache and injuries for Bassett. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the early slate before we get started, because well, it's a split slate today, and we have some things that we need to talk about. Top Stacks tool. I'm looking at it right now. This one's a biggie. San Diego pulling 1/3 of the top stack odds for today, and 1/3 of the ownership, or at least close to it. How do you want to manage the Padres on this early slate?
This game has to be like possibly the worst pitching matchup that has ever happened in the last 5 years.
14-run implied total, by the way. Jake Arrieta and Chichi Gonzalez, just to get
it's
that
like
out there for
95
everybody.
degrees in Coors Field with Jake Arrieta and Chichi Gonzalez pitching. It's a tough spot. I mean, a lot of it I think does come back to what size tournaments you're playing, because the raw ownership, if you're playing massive field tournaments, there's just going to be so many teams. Even if the Padres aren't really aren't over-owned at all at 30%, there's still going to be so many teams that have them that's something you want to at least consider. Whereas if you're playing smaller field and, even if their ownership's a little bit higher because the field's sharper, the raw number of teams you have to get lucky against if the Padres do well is lower. So they're a little bit more appealing there. But even in large field, it's a 5-game slate. I'm going to get the Padres. It's just, I'm going to be doing what I can to get low owned players elsewhere in my lineup, because it obviously is a fantastic spot for them. Chichi Gonzalez is not good at all. He might be better than Jake Arrieta, but he's not good at all. 305 expected ISO to right-handed hitters this year, 161 to lefties, and just, all kinds of power in the Padres lineup.
Yeah, that's bonkers. The 14-run implied total. I mean, It's more than a 50-50 shot that one of the Padres or the Rockies are the top stack today based on our top stack tool, which is really crazy to see. Similar ownership. We're showing San Diego as slightly underowned. We're seeing Colorado as slightly overowned. We're also showing Cincinnati as pretty significantly overowned. How do you want to manage the rest of this slate from a stacks perspective if you're getting out of cores?
Yeah, so I mean, the way it looks right now, I think I would be getting to the Padres and then probably not getting to as much Colorado or Cincy, and then spreading my exposures to like the Blue Jays, who right now are projected to be considerably underowned. Not a great matchup against Josiah Gray, but also a bit of a question mark. Like, we know Josiah Gray has good stuff. We know that he is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, but still, no track record of success to this point in the major leagues. He's only made, I think, like 5 or fewer starts. So there's still a pretty wide range of outcomes for him. He's allowed 2.7 home runs per 9 so far, 4.46 xFIP. The strikeout numbers have been good, but certainly has been hittable as well. So I think Toronto looks like they're going pretty underowned right now. And then you also have San Francisco not getting a whole lot of ownership. They look like a team that I'd be getting to against Tyler McGill, who has dropped off a bit since the beginning of the season.
We needed to at least talk a little bit about pitchers, and I'm going to start here. Is there any reason you would go to Jake Arrieta or Gigi Gonzalez today?
The reason, and this is, I think, more so for Gonzalez than for Arrieta, although I guess on a 5-game slate, you can make it for Arrieta too. Like, Gonzalez is 4,800 and he's stretched out. So like, as bad as he is, as good as the Padres are, it's still baseball. There's going to be games where Gigi Gonzalez just somehow goes 5 innings and doesn't gives up a run or two. So like the reason would just be the game theory of, if 30% of the field is stacking Padres hitters and this $4,800 pitcher happens to not get blown up. Like, if you're not playing the Padres, you can kind of argue that you may as well just use the $4,800 pitcher, because if the Padres go off, you're losing regardless because you don't have them. And if they don't go off, the pitcher probably did well against them. So that would be the case that you're making. It's obviously still really risky and not great to get to. The case for Arrieta would be that the Rockies as a team really aren't that good. Arrieta is absolute garbage though. So, there's that issue, but it's kind of the same argument on the other side. Just, if you're not playing the Rockies and 1/5 of the field is, and the Rockies do well, you're kind of in trouble anyway. And if they don't do well, Arrieta probably had a good game at low ownership. So those are the arguments. It's not one that I'm likely to get a lot of, or hopefully any of, but those would be the arguments for those two.
Okay. What is your argument for Tyler Mahle, who's at the top of our top pitchers tool for DraftKings, but also pulling a 74% ownership?
Yeah, pretty crazy ownership. I expect it comes in a little bit lower than that, just because that is a ton of ownership. But he has, outside of Josiah Gray, on this slate, he has the highest strikeout percentage at 28.4%. He's facing the Cubs, who do not have a particularly good lineup. Mahle's price tag, I think, is reasonable at $9K. So I do think he's the best pitcher. But, again, there are guys you can pivot to. If, for example, you're playing like a relatively popular Padres stack, you maybe don't also want Tyler Mahle. You can go to a lower owned Jose Barrios, who I think is a fantastic option as well. You can roll the dice on somebody like Desclafani or Tyler McGill just to get a little bit less ownership there.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on from this early slate, whether it's on the hitting side or on the pitching side?
Yeah, actually, Josiah Gray right now is projected for 9% ownership. I already said, I think Toronto bats are going underowned right now because of the wide range of outcomes for Gray, but that also makes Gray appealing at that ownership too, because he has struck out 28.5% of hitters so far in the majors. A little bit elevated walk percentage. He's given up home runs and all of that, but the strikeout numbers are there. And on a 5-game slate, if you're going to get, crazy amounts of ownership going to Tyler Mahle, and then, 25 to 35% going to everyone else there with, Barrios and McGill and Desclafani. Josiah Gray has the same sort of strikeout upside, albeit a difficult matchup. He's, I think, going just a little bit underowned.
Okay. Well, that's a quick look at the early slate for today. If you have any further questions and you are a premium sub, make sure you're popping into our Slack chat where we can answer a couple extra questions for you before that one kicks off. But now we transition to the 10-game main slate for today. And it's the same on both sides. We don't have any 7-gamers. We've just got 10 games. And by everything that I can see, doesn't look like we're going to have any weather issues heading into the night either. So we're just going to straight up talk about 10 games if you're ready.
Yeah.
Now that we've got a much bigger crew in here, 256 concurrent viewers, just 51 likes. Let's hit that thumbs up to start this bad boy off as we talk about the main slate. And we start with the Yankees and the Red Sox. Yankees at a 5.1 run implied total. Red Sox 4.9. Andrew Heaney and Nick Pivetta. Heaney at 8% ownership on DK, 8% on FanDuel as well. Nick Pivetta not really pulling any ownership. How are you feeling about the pitching in this matchup?
Not great. I mean, Heaney always gives you strikeout upside. He's 7,900, but really, really brutal matchup for him going up against Boston. Tough to pick up strikeouts against a lineup like this. And then also just so much power here for someone that gives up just absolute crazy amounts of home runs. 1.98 home runs per 9 for Heaney this year. So I think on a 10-game slate, pretty difficult to get there. And then Pivetta, you do get strikeout upside for him going against this Yankees lineup, but it is also a pretty dangerous lineup, and he's not exactly cheap. There is good pitching on this slate as well. So I don't really have much interest in either pitcher.
Okay. I don't really have anything either. When I ran my stuff, Heaney came in at 9%. He's owned at 8%. I don't really have anything to add. Pivetta actually came in at 5%. He's not picking up any ownership, but the difference between 1% and 5% to me is basically nothing. He's just not going to be a priority. He's way down the list. Offense, on the other hand, a little bit different here. I've got the Red Sox 5th. I've got the Yankees 6th. I've got the Red Sox coming in a little bit under-owned. Do you have a preference in this game of the direction you're looking to go?
I really like the Red Sox bats here.
Okay.
It's just so much power from the right side. And it's not like Heaney is great at limiting power to lefties either. So guys like Schwarber and Devers, assuming they're in the lineup, still a 189 actual ISO, 158 expected ISO to lefties with only a 21% strikeout percentage this year. And then against righties, a 193 expected ISO, 240 actual ISO from Heaney. I really like getting to the Red Sox, and they're not getting much ownership now either relative to their top stack percentage, 9% chance of being the top stack, about 7% ownership. New York, on the other hand, kind of flipped, 6% top stack percentage, 9% ownership. I think that they are also in a good spot, but it is still a bit of a watered down lineup. And Nick Pivetta will give up home runs, but I think also is just a pretty decent pitcher. 1.3 home runs per 9, 26.5% strikeout percentage, 4.32 xFIP. I prefer targeting the Red Sox side of this, especially lower ownership.
Yeah, my number 5 stack overall, number 3 in leverage. Just a lot of guys that stand out to me. On the Yankee side, it's not like I have a problem with the Yanks. I have them as basically very comparable stacks. It just so happens that there's more ownership coming to New York than there is for Boston. Do any Yankees bats stand out to you?
Gallo at 4,500, I think, is a pretty big discount for as good of a hitter as he is. You can always play Stanton and Judge, but Gallo at 4,500 and Voit at 3,500, I think, stand out as really good values.
For anybody that cares, I have the total for this game personally at 11 runs. It is not that high. Actually, it's only at 10. So I would lean a little bit to the over if you're interested. All signs point to it.
Or if you think Josh is a moron, you lean to the under.
Well, what are we going to do that for, man? That's out of nowhere. That just seems completely uncalled for. Completely uncalled for.
I'm just giving the people options.
I think they get it. You don't have to take it, everybody. I just recommend that you do. Cue the 1-0 pitchers duel between Pivetta and Heaney tonight, by the way, now that happened. Jordan Burkhart, obviously a watcher of the breakfast menu. How many strips of bacon on that one? I'd put a strip of bacon on that bad boy. Oh, super chat on this strategy show. We don't normally get a lot of these. Ray P with the big ones. So thank you very much. How concerned should we be about the weather for Toronto, Washington for the early slate? Do you think that impacts the ownership for Berrios? Thanks.
So right now, what I'm seeing right now, I'm not really concerned about it. It looks like there's a chance that they get some rain, but I mean, that's kind of the case in a lot of places every day. I will say, and I have no idea if this is even the same line, so literally take this for almost nothing, but probably like a half hour before this show started, it was raining like crazy here in Baltimore, and literally like 10 minutes later it was sunny. So if they are moving through that quickly, that's another reason that I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. Definitely keeping an eye on it to see if they become more likely to get clipped than it looks right now, but for now I don't really think it's going to matter.
Okay, there you go. Do you think it matters at all for Berrios' ownership?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I always have a hard time gauging that anyway, like exactly how much weather factors in. But I think typically you see it when a game starts in a delay, ownership come down a bit. I think typically when you get the like, oh, it might rain, but probably won't, I don't think people really care that much.
Okay. Thank you for the super chat, Ray. On to Tigers and Angels. No, not on to Tigers and Angels.
I was just going to say, if for whatever reason that game starts in a delay, I would run the other direction really quickly.
There you go. Tariq Skubal, Shohei Ohtani, two guys on the mound today. Skubal at 13% ownership. Shohei Ohtani at 63. The floor is yours on that one. The floor is yours on that one.
I don't know what our first ownership run does, but it always loves Ohtani. He'll be like 25-30% later when we do the show again.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not reading into that because it's always too high, but it is a good spot for Ohtani. You know, the Tigers do have strikeouts in this lineup. He's only 8,600. He has struck out 29.7% of hitters this year, which is second only to Freddie Peralta on this slate. I think he should be one of, if not the most popular pitchers on the slate. I don't think he gets 63% ownership here, though.
Okay, I'm going to put in a call to see if we can get that refreshed. What about Skubal at 13% ownership right now? 7,400 against the Angels.
Yeah, it seems like the ownership there is reasonable. I do like going to Skubal in tournaments just because he does have really, really good strikeout stuff. He's kind of like Andrew Heaney, except not actually. He's just kind of like Andrew Heaney. But I think the matchup against the Angels isn't as dangerous as the matchup against the Red Sox. Skubal struck out 26% of hitters this year, 4.16 xFIP, 1.95 home runs per nine against right-handed hitters in particular, 25.9% strikeout percentage, but also a 245 expected ISO. So, you know, the comparison to Heaney, it's basically he's going to rack up strikeouts, but he also is going to give the Angels chances to do damage. There's not a ton of really good hitters in this lineup, though. Like you have Ohtani, lefty. You can't roster him, but it is still a good matchup for Ohtani. But from the right side, you know, guys like Upton and Joe Adell and Max Stassi, they have power, but they also strike out quite a bit. So I think it's a pretty good spot for Skubal, decent chance of success. Definitely a spot where you pay attention to ownership, though, because if Skubal were to really start pulling, 20-25% ownership, he's a volatile enough pitcher that I wouldn't really like it. But if he's going to be 10 to 12%, I like going to Skubal in tournaments.
Okay. For those that care, I got Ohtani at 19% when I ran my sim. So if we're expecting, like you mentioned, something in the mid-20s, that seems about right. How do you feel about going to offenses? I have the Angels 7th. Most of that is just being driven by Ohtani. I have the Tigers 13th. Not really a spot that I'm trying to get to a lot. Although, given the fact that Ohtani is going to be pretty significantly owned, I think there's at least a little bit of leverage for the Tigers bats if you want to go that direction. But 13th out of 20th isn't exactly a ringing endorsement. Yeah,
nothing I expect to get tons of. Like they do get a little bump, like you said, because Ohtani's going to be popular, but they also, nothing else really looks good for them. Like they're one of the least likely teams to be the highest scoring stack. Their ownership's about where it should be based on that. So they do get a little bump because of Ohtani's ownership, but I don't think it'll be enough for me to get, tons of them in tournaments or anything.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Like the pieces fit together correctly. They're just not good enough overall for that to matter.
Yeah. Like I think if I'm going to bats here, I'm more interested in the Angels side because they are projected to be a little bit underowned. And like I said, Skubal does give up power. So, even though I think there's a pretty good chance Skubal has a good start, there are going to be some starts where, Gosselin, Iglesias, Upton, Adell, Stassi, like the right-handed middle of this order just get to him. So I do think the Angels are somewhat appealing.
Do you expect to get to much of this game in general, though, outside of pitching?
No. And some Angels bats.
Sure. I don't really have anything else here for the rest of Tigers. Angels. Who's your favorite bat in this game that isn't Ohtani?
$2,900 Upton.
Yeah, that'll work. I actually don't have him in my current projected lineup. Do I need to update that? Take a look. Guess I do. That one refreshed since I did things in the morning, which is annoying, but neither here nor there. We'll keep it moving too. I guess my favorite team of the day, Rays and Orioles, 5.7 run implied total for the Rays, 3.3 for the Orioles. Went very well for the Rays yesterday. From what I've seen, it's Ryan Yarbrough coming in as the long man for Tampa, Spencer Watkins for Baltimore. Have you seen anything different regarding the starter for the Rays? Or the main guy for the Rays, I guess is probably the better way to say that.
I lost the page. Who did you say you had?
Yarbrough.
I see. I was on the wrong.
I know. Lewis Head is definitely the guy that's listed.
Yeah, that's Yarbrough will be activated from the COVID-19 list and serve as the bulk pitcher Wednesday against the Orioles. Mark Topkin reports.
There we go. So I'm not even going to ask you your thoughts on Spencer Watkins. We're not doing that. Do you have interest in going to Ryan Yarbrough at 8K today?
No, not at 8K. If you were starting this game, I'd be a little bit more interested, but hard to really pay 8K for a guy when my guess is he's going to throw like 5 innings.
Okay. I gave him 5 innings. That's perfect. He showed up in 7%. For me, that seems good enough. 8K is fine. And it's obviously a solid enough matchup. Let's talk a little bit about these Rays. Number 1 overall stack for me, and I think they're under-owned. Number 1 as well on FanDuel. I think they're properly owned, where they are just getting a ton of ownership. Top stack tool has Tampa second and showing up a little bit under-owned. You're going to be getting to a lot of Tampa, I assume.
Yeah, the way it looks right now, because it's not even like they're pulling crazy amounts of ownership. Watkins, there's nothing about him that suggests he's going to be a good major league pitcher. He's had some success early, seemingly lucky. But then also the Orioles bullpen is just so bad behind him. Like, we see so many games where the Orioles starter does okay, and the stack against them isn't really doing that well. And then in the last 3 or 4 innings of the game, they just pile on runs because nobody in that bullpen can get outs. The only thing sort of working against Tampa here is that this game is in Tropicana, but to have nearly a 6 implied run total in Tropicana Field is just absurd. Tons of power top to bottom in this lineup. Spencer Watkins has only struck out 11.8% of right-handed hitters this year while allowing a 300 expected ISO. Just absolutely absurd numbers there. He's had more success against lefties with a 17.8% strikeout percentage and only a 130 expected ISO. But when you're talking about lefties as good as Brandon Lau and Austin Meadows and, Wander Franco, I don't really care. Like, I'm still going to those guys. I think Watkins probably just gets worse against lefties as he faces more of them. And then the right-handed bats like Nelson Cruz and Randy Arozarena look great as well.
Yeah, load up on them. They all look fantastic to me, given our current ownership numbers. Let's see, did we get that update yet? Nope, not yet. Be aware of it on FanDuel. Brandon Lau, 27% owned. Nelson Cruz, 26% owned. Austin Meadows is at 20. Choi is at 17. It's a very different experience going on DK, but either way, this is my top team, both sites. Happy to get there and love them. If the ownership holds, if Locke were in 5 minutes, I would just have a crazy amount of the Rays because I think they're projecting wildly under-owned. Do you like any Baltimore bats here against Tampa?
Not really. I mean, you can always make a case for Mountcastle and Santander and Hayes when they're really cheap, but I think Yarbrough is a good enough pitcher. I don't like the park. Only a 3.2 implied run total, 176 expected ISO allowed to righties this year from Yarbrough. So again, I think if you need a cheap bat at relatively low ownership, those guys do give you some power upside, but they're not priorities for me.
It's another game where I would happily take the over. Line is 9. I've got it significantly higher than that. So if you're interested, shop around, find a good number, hop on the over here. I know Ben has taken the Orioles actually getting a run and a half via the breakfast menu, which you guys should be watching each day. Favorite bat in the game?
Nelson Cruz.
Okay. I think mine's Meadows.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Cruz is reasonable, Meadows is reasonable, Lau is reasonable. Yeah, it's kind of just pick one.
I mean, I like Choi a lot too for 3,900. Yeah.
I also like Franco and Arozarena.
Yeah. It all looks pretty damn good for the Rays.
If I had to just pick a Ray to hit a home run here, it's Cruz.
Lots of shows today coming up. So at 1:30 Eastern time, the NFL season-long Monkey Knife Fight show will be Eric and Greg going live for about a half hour. We've got the deeper dive. You will be back for that bad boy, 5 p.m. with Eric. I will then be on live before lock with Greg at 6 p.m. But we're not done after that. 7:30 Eastern time, so about a half hour after Greg and I finish up, Ben and Eric will close it out with some PGA live before lock. Good stuff all around. So 4 more live shows coming out today, plus free content, MLB player projections. It's the best thing you guys could be looking for, I would imagine. If you want to see what our projections look like behind the paywall normally, they are in front of the paywall today. Keep an eye out for Nightbot to drop that link or just browse straight to them. Go to awesemo.com to check them out. Marlins and Braves, 3-run implied total for the Marlins, 4.6 for the Braves. It's Jesus Luzardo, Charlie Morton. Morton at a crisp 43% ownership. Luzardo at 10. Let's start with Morton. I believe that ownership is fully warranted. 9,700 for him in this park. To me, he's unquestionably the top pitcher on today's slate. I've got him projected as such by like 3 fantasy points. I don't mind that ownership at all.
Yeah, I think he deserves it as well. The only, I guess, question mark is that his salary did jump $1,400 since his last start. So he is, well, on one hand, I think he was underpriced in his last start, but also I think when you're paying 9,700 for Morton, you are paying for the matchup here. So it is baked in, and then you're also getting the ownership there. So like, I think that maybe a little bit over-owned, especially when you have guys like, Flaherty and Peralta getting like 17% ownership. But we talk about it a lot with pitchers only taking up one spot in your lineup. I don't care that much if a pitcher is quote unquote over-owned by a little bit, because it's just gonna be so easy for me to get low-owned guys elsewhere in my lineup and not really care. I still think Charlie Morton's one of the best pitchers on the slate. The game's in Miami, which is good. Miami's offense is bad, which is also good for Morton. And, he has been good this year. He struck out 28% of hitters, 3.42 xFIP, just a really, really good pitcher in a good spot. The only, again, the only thing I kind of felt worth pointing out was that I do think the combination of his salary and the ownership does kind of counteract the fact that he's facing the Marlins.
Yeah, he's definitely priced for exactly what's about to happen here with a ultra below average team in an excessive pitcher's park. Like, everything that you could ask for Morton is in this spot, but they priced him for it. So
right.
That's all fine by me. What about Luzardo, though? 6,100, pulling 10% ownership. It's not a massive run total for the Braves, just 4.6. I actually estimate it to be a little bit lower, but this is a scary Braves lineup.
I like the Braves here. I don't know what's wrong with Luzardo, but he's just been so bad. You can make the case, like if you need to go to a cheap pitcher, you can make a case for Luzardo just based on arm talent and the fact that he has good stuff, but he has just been unable to do anything with it this season. And that includes since joining Miami. Granted, he's had some difficult matchups since coming to Miami. He's pitched against the Rockies in Coors. He's faced the Yankees. But even in his last start, he gave up 5 earned runs to the Cubs, who we know are not a good offense. He's still talented, but it's just a matter of putting it together. So at 6,100, there's certainly upside, but there's also a lot of upside in these Braves bats because Luzardo just hasn't had it this year. And the park isn't good for power, but there's just so much right-handed power in the Braves lineup. Only a 20.5% strikeout percentage against righties this year for Luzardo, 231 expected ISO. If I have to choose one side here, I'm siding with the Braves power. Jorge Soler at 3,800 is a really cheap price tag. Same goes for Duvall. Same goes for Travis d'Arnaud. And then the middle of that order, a little bit more expensive, but also I think deservedly so.
60 graded fastball, 65 graded slider with upside of a 70, a 55 changeup, which is also really nice if you're getting those 3 pitches. Neutral command, the number 5 overall prospect in baseball per Fangraphs. If it makes you feel a little bit better, Sean V says Luzardo is awful. So I probably want to just go to Luzardo, given the actual facts that exist, instead of whatever the hell he thinks. So put that out. I'm just putting that out there. By the way, he showed up in slightly less in my sims than the ownership. So it's not somebody that I'd be actively going for, but if he thinks he's awful, he's most certainly good. Braves bats, 9th overall for me, 5th in leverage. I don't mind going there. You touched on them a little bit before. Ozzie Albies standing out a lot to me at 5K, happily going to go to the rest of that lineup. It's not a great spot, but this is definitely a team that I want to have at least a little bit of parts of.
Sorry, you're talking about Atlanta. I was telling people.
Yeah, just Atlanta. I mean, I don't think that either of us are going to the Marlins. So
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, they're not a priority. I would say they're like a secondary team for me. But 9th overall and 5th in leverage. That's going to push you up at least a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. It's just like we were talking about with Detroit. If Morton's going to get 40% ownership, that is a check mark for the Marlins, but nothing else is going to move them up for me.
Okay. On to Cardinals and Brewers. 3.4 run implied total for the Cardinals, 3.6 for the Brewers. Jack Flaherty, Freddie Peralta. This is a hell of a pitching matchup. Flaherty at 18% ownership, 9,100 on DraftKings. Peralta, 17% ownership at 10,200. I did not realize that Freddie Peralta was mowing down like 35% of batters this year. He is striking out everything that moves. How do you want to manage these two guys? We saw Flaherty throw 6 innings and 81 pitches, I believe, in that first start back from the DL. Do you have a preference between each guy? The price difference, $1,100, might be enough to get you to one side or the other, but this does seem like a premier pitching option matchup.
Yeah, I think both of these pitchers look good, especially in tournaments, because I think you're just going to see so much ownership being pulled by the combination of Charlie Morton and Shohei Ohtani that it's going to lead to Flaherty and Peralta getting a little bit less. And that's reflected in the ownership projections right now. Granted, I don't believe Ohtani actually pulls 62%, but he's still going to pull a lot, and he's going to pull more than Peralta and Flaherty. And that's not even mentioning Lance Lynn as well. So I think both of these guys are pretty appealing, because like the matchup isn't as good for either of them as it is for Ohtani and Morton. But Peralta does lead the slate with a 34% strikeout percentage this season. He threw like 90 pitches his last start. We haven't had one of those starts where he's randomly limited in a while. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. But I think, from an upside standpoint, he's not that much more expensive than Morton. The strikeout stuff is better. The matchup is worse, but you're getting a pretty big ownership discount. So I like that. And then on the other side with Flaherty, not as good, I don't think, as Peralta at this point, but he's also less expensive at 9,100. Threw 81 pitches his last start in 6 innings. That was his first start back from the injured list. I'm assuming he can get to like 90 or so here. And he's a good pitcher as well. He struck out 26% of hitters this year, 3.96 xFIP. And the matchup against Milwaukee isn't great, but it's not terrible. So I think both of these guys, as long as they're getting somewhere around like half the ownership of Morton and Ohtani, I think they look really good in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm happy to get to either one of these guys, especially at the current ownership numbers. We'll see how those numbers change as we cut, 30% out of Ohtani's ownership number whenever that gets updated. I do actually prefer another guy at the top that isn't getting the ownership, and we'll get to Lance Lynn in a bit, I guess. But either way, Flaherty Peralta, really nice pitching matchup. Anxious to see how much deeper Flaherty can go into the game. I can't imagine we are justifying any sort of Cardinals or Brewers stacks here.
No, I don't really see it. I mean, both pitchers are really good. Neither pitcher right now getting enough ownership for me to really want to go up against them. The Brewers aren't even cheap. I mean, they're really expensive here. The Cardinals are less expensive, but again, Peralta, there's some like really good strikeout pitchers where they do struggle with home runs, like Max Scherzer, for example. But Peralta hasn't even been that. He's only allowed 0.77 home runs per 9 this year. Just a really unlikely spot, I think, to kind of luck into a home run.
Yeah, I don't want to dig in too much to Cardinals Brewers, but I would like to watch this pitching matchup, though. That would be a good time. Anything else for Cardinals and Brewers?
Nope.
All right. Lots to talk about here with regards to promos. I'll hit you with the free soccer quickly. If you want to watch the Premier League, we have DFS projections for the Premier League. You could use the promo code free soccer, get a week worth of those projections. We've got more games coming up this Saturday, so you don't want to miss it. Use that promo code. Then we got the Blitz promo, 25% off an Awesemo Plus annual package for the NFL. We don't do a lot of discounts on our annual packages. If you're going to be playing NFL and you're going to be subscribing to Awesemo.com, I highly recommend you use this promo code. Projections, ownership, top stacks, premium slack, and a lot more behind the paywall. You want to use this code if you are interested in NFL DFS. But if you're playing some season long, our fantasy football draft kit is now available for season long and for best ball leagues. It's the same projections, tools, and analysis that we use for all of our NFL DFS stuff. That includes our draft wingman tool, best ball rankings, and a stacking guide, trade value chart, and more. You can get a $35 credit for underdog and FFPC leagues when you sign up, which is a pretty decent deal. You can get this package for 33% off when you use the promo code WR, like wide receiver, WR at checkout. That's less than $10 for everything we have to offer for season long and best ball. I assume Nightbot can drop a link to that as well into chat, but the draft wingman tool is pretty cool. I have a sneaky suspicion you're going to see me using it on a stream in the near future, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Fantasy football, man, it is here. How many best ball drafts have you done so far?
I think I've done 50 to 60 on DraftKings and like 75 on Underdog.
Not too bad, not too bad. Is there anything like, you're going to do the full 150, right?
Yeah, unless I run out of time, but that's the plan.
Do you just like pick a couple each day? Are you like trying to do like 2 or 3, or do you just pick a day where you're like, all right, I just did 24 of these?
I usually just start doing them. Like I'll do a couple when I wake up and then like I work. Sometimes I'll do them while I'm working, but then normally when I'm just like watching baseball, I just start doing them again. Or if I go to the bar, I'll sit there and do them.
Is that a goal for you to try to have sort of like a more diversified portfolio, stretching out a couple a day over the course of like a month and a half?
Yeah, it was a goal this year because last year I thought I timed it really poorly. Like I had maxed out DraftKings by the time the season started when they were giving out free tickets and it was really soft. So I didn't want to max out like super early again. But I also didn't really start that early. So I did try and just kind of like, spread it out more. That's why like I did like 50 on DraftKings back in like July and then just switched over to Underdog. And then soon I'm going to switch back just to like kind of balance it out.
Ownership has been updated. Shohei Ohtani, 24% owned. We've got Charlie Morton at 47.6. So if you want to refresh anything you have there, we do have the updated ownership numbers.
And now Flaherty is getting more than Ohtani. If that's the case, give me Ohtani.
Let's see how I have it here. Yes, I agree. I prefer Ohtani, ignoring ownership. The fact that those guys are different in their current ownership. Flaherty at 28, Ohtani at 24. Give me
Scooble
Ohtani
also up
well.
to 19% makes the Angels look a little bit more appealing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Although like I still like Scooble, but it makes the Angels look better.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to Rangers and Mariners. 3.8 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.8 for the Mariners. Mike Foltynewicz, Marco Gonzalez, Folty at 2% ownership, Marco Gonzalez at 19. I guess we got to start there. I think that ownership is warranted, even though it's not fun.
Yeah, much more likely to get to him at 19% than 40, whatever it was last time he faced Texas when he had like the best game of his career. He has been pitching better lately, even excluding that Texas game. The numbers haven't been, bad in his recent starts. Still not someone that I love getting to, but he is pretty inexpensive. He does have a good matchup with Texas. Overall this year, only a 20% strikeout percentage, 1.82 home runs per 9, but not much power in the Texas lineup to do damage against him. So I'm fine with him at that ownership. But, if he starts to get 30% or something, then I'll be backing away again.
Does it open you up to any interest for Rangers bats? I assume we're not talking about Folty, although 5,100 is at least close to a reasonable price tag.
Yeah, I mean, 5,100 is kind of like if I, for whatever reason, need a 5K pitcher, I'll use him, but I don't think I'll need to get there that much. As far as the Rangers bats go, I don't really think so. I mean, Adolis Garcia at 3,400, I think is fine as like a one-off. Yanni Hernandez has power speed leading off. He'll steal bases if he gets on, but as a whole, I don't really have interest in Texas.
Mariners bats rank third for me, but second to last from a leverage perspective, not ideal. How are you managing going to Seattle against the gas can that is Mike Foltynewicz?
Yeah, probably one of these teams where I'm still going to get to the individual hitters, just mixed in with stacks that are lower owned, because Folty, does give up plenty of power. 193 expected ISO to righties and 276 to lefties. Mitch Haniger looks good at 5K. Seager, France, Toro, Kelnick, assuming he's batting like sixth. Those guys are all going to look like good options. But with the ownership they're getting right now, I'd rather be mixing them in with some lower owned teams than just jamming 5 of them in together.
Yeah, Seager at 21%, Cal Raleigh at 17%. Those guys are just coming in a little bit overowned, this whole stack in general. But I do like the individual matchups for them. It's just not a team that I can really prioritize as a 5-man. It just doesn't look all that good. I don't have anything else here for Rangers and Mariners.
Me neither.
Getting to White Sox and A's, 5-run implied total for the Sox, 3.8 for the A's. Lance Lynn, Cole Irvin, no ownership to Irvin, but 14% coming to Lance Lynn at 10K, 10% coming to him on FanDuel at 9,500. I like Lynn a little bit more than the current ownership shows. How do you feel about Lance Lynn against the A's?
Yeah, same boat for me. Kind of. So now with the current ownership, you got Flaherty, jumping up to 28%. You still have Lynn at 13, and he's in that price range where, he's $300 more than Charlie Morton, who is getting like 3.5 times the ownership. The matchup against Oakland isn't very good. They're a very dangerous lineup that will make Lance Lynn work. But Lynn struck out 28% of hitters this year, 3.87 xFIP. He works deep into games, throws a lot of pitches. If he's going to be the lowest owned out of that group, I like him in tournaments just because I think the range of outcomes is very similar for all of those guys. Even though the median projection might not be quite as good because the matchup's more difficult, Lynn's ceiling is just as high as, guys like Peralta and Morton.
We're on the same page there. He showed up in 21% of my sims, just 14% ownership. This is definitely a spot that I would like to get to in the larger field stuff. I don't have anything to say about Cole Irvin at 8,400.
No, me neither. He's an okay pitcher, but I think better, not a great real life pitcher, but better real life pitcher than fantasy pitcher. 17% strikeout percentage, 4.74 xFIP. Not a particularly appealing matchup against all the right-handed power in the White Sox lineup either.
Speaking of that White Sox lineup, I have them ranked 10th, 7th in leverage. They sort of just exist for me. Are they more interesting for you?
No, they kind of just seem like a middle of the pack. Like I assume I'm going to get, 5 to 10% or something of them right around the field because, they do have power. Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu, Jimenez, all right-handed power bats, but they're also expensive. They're not going to be that easy to get to. Cole Irvin has only allowed a 144 expected ISO to righties this year. So it's not like he's really gotten blown up consistently. It's a high upside spot just because of how much power they have, but there's plenty of hitting spots that I like a little bit more than the White Sox.
You and me both, and I don't really have a single bit of interest in the opposite side of this one against Lance Lynn. I guess if the ownership comes up, it could potentially unlock that, but at the same time, it's not a great spot. Run total doesn't look all that good. Although I will say, I don't totally agree with that A's run total, and I did use Oakland as one of the bets on the breakfast menu for today. Do you want to get to an unowned Oakland A's stack here against Lance Lynn?
The answer for me is almost always yes to that question, but I don't think it is here just because it is a big enough slate. There's still 19 other offenses that they'll have to beat. Lynn is a good pitcher, doesn't give up a lot of power, only 0.9 home runs per 9 innings. So Oakland's one of the teams that typically, if they're low owned, I'm willing to roll the dice on them in tournaments. But this is a spot I doubt that I get there just because I do have so much respect for Lynn. And then also the guys that you really want, Starling Marte and Matt Olson, are also extremely expensive.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. It's just very difficult to make that prioritization. We do have Oakland middle of the pack in top stack odds with no ownership whatsoever. You do get a slight bump if that Lynn ownership starts to rise. I think there's a path for it. It just doesn't seem all that interesting to target Lance Lynn today. Yeah,
exactly. Oakland, I think always should, even in tough matchups, they should at least be middle of the pack and top stack percentage, just because of how much power they have. Kind of like you and I talked about on a show with Tampa Bay the other day, where when they do well, they just have the ability to do so much better than so many other teams because every hitter in the lineup almost has massive power. So they kind of always need to have a relatively high chance of success, but I still have trouble prioritizing them against Lance Lynn.
Anything else in this game?
Nope.
I've been mentioning a lot of bets throughout this show. The easiest thing that you can do is use our presenting sponsor, OddsShopper, to grab your lines. You don't want to just go to one individual book. You want to shop around, find the best number that's out there. That's what I do each morning for the breakfast menu. I know it's the same thing that Ben's doing, and that's what you should be doing when you're placing your bets. So go to oddshopper.com. You can set up notifications for certain line movement. It's going to allow you to shop around for game lines, player props, team futures. We have expected win percentage and expected ROI on every single MLB player prop bet that's available that comes straight out of the Awesemo projections. It's all there for you at OddsShopper, and it doesn't cost you a cent to use it. So make sure you're using it. If you're trying to bet on sports, that is the place you should be going first to figure out what the lines are. Go to oddshopper.com. I promise you, it will help you out in the long run, and it won't cost you a single penny. 3 more games to go here. We're moving pretty nicely through this 10-gamer. Royals and Astros, 4.2 run implied total for the Royals, 5.3 for the Stros. Brady Singer, Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke, by the way, the highest scoring pitcher on the slate the last time he went. Just wanted to point that out. No ownership coming to Singer, no ownership coming to Greinke, but there probably should be at least a little bit of it. Not nearly as much as I was recommending last time, but 8% sounds about good. How do you feel about Zach Greinke today?
Yeah, I'm with you as far as, if you get more than the 1% he's projected for, that's fine. He's not a priority for me. He doesn't have the same strikeout stuff as pitchers that are a little bit more expensive, like Ohtani or Flaherty. Even, you can save money and go to Skubal, who has better strikeout stuff. But when you have 19% ownership going to Marco Gonzalez at 7,600, when you have 20% going to Skubal at 7,400, it does tell me that it's probably going to be pretty useful to get to a pitcher in that price range. Even Andrew Haney's getting 10 times the ownership of Greinke right now. So no issues, getting to a little bit of him just because it is an okay matchup against Kansas City. The only hitter who's been above average against right-handed pitching since last year in their projected lineup is Salvador Perez. It's just, Greinke has only struck out 18.5% of hitters this year, 4.11 xFIP, but I don't really think that he is any less likely to have a good game than pitchers like Heaney against the Red Sox. So yeah, I think 1% is too low, but definitely not something I'm going crazy on either.
Yeah, I think you could just as easily go to Yarborough at 8K, Heaney at 79, who's already pulling that ownership. But that trio to me looks pretty similar. I don't really have much of a lean to any one of those guys. Greinke pulls through because he's just simply not getting any ownership, and I think that he should.
Yeah, and I'd give him a slight edge over Yarborough just because he's likely to throw an extra inning or two.
Absolutely. And could get the win where Yarborough getting a win would be a significantly less likely scenario.
Well, Yarborough's still got a decent chance.
I guess.
Because whoever starts isn't going to get the win. So Yarborough's going to come in. Assume at some point the Rays take the lead either before he comes in or while he's pitching. He's going to get the win.
That's fair. Do you think Ryan Yarborough is more likely to get the win in this scenario or if he started?
I think it's similar, but he doesn't have an innings requirement now for the win.
That's fair.
Like realistically, the Rays take the lead in the first inning before he comes in. He ends up only pitching 4 innings for whatever reason. As long as he doesn't blow the lead and the bullpen doesn't blow it, he's still getting the win here.
I think what we're describing right now is a situation of a stat that should not exist.
Yes, agreed.
Astros bats, I have them 8th. I have them 18th in leverage, so third from the bottom. Pulling just a little bit more than I would really like. Do you find yourself wanting to get to Houston? The run total looks good, but I don't know what it is. They just don't seem to shine the way that I would like them to. Maybe it's just price.
Yeah, I think they look good. I don't think Brady Singer is terrible either, though. He's one of Kansas City's top pitching prospects. His strikeout numbers this year aren't great, only 20.2% to righties, 23.5 to lefties, but a .084 expected ISO to right-handed hitters so far, 151 to lefties. I'm not saying, the Astros are in a bad spot or anything because they are a very good offense, but Singer hasn't been terrible. I do think a lot of this too will be impacted by what exactly does Houston's lineup look like. Yordan Alvarez sat out yesterday. I think he's questionable for today. If he's in, that helps the lineup a lot. If you get a lineup like we got yesterday, where I think the bottom of it was like McCormick, Myers, Maldonado, and someone else that just wasn't very good. Like they're already missing Kyle Tucker. There's a chance that you get a little bit more watered down Houston lineup than you would really like.
Houston at the top of our top stacks tool though, and showing up as pretty significantly under-owned. So the Awesemo.com tools flying in the face of what I've got going on today. I'm anxious to see how it changes as we get closer to lock. But for right now, Houston is the number one stack available per Awesemo.com.
Their ownership. Their ownership also is being driven pretty heavily by Brantley, Alvarez, and Diaz. But Brantley and Diaz in particular, they're just really cheap. So you're getting 15% going to Brantley, 10% going to Diaz. As a whole, I don't even think it's that popular of a stack. Like if you just say, okay, I'm going to play Altuve, Correa, Alvarez, Gurriel or something, they're not even that popular.
We got another refresh, so I'm popping this in now. Yeah, they're really not all that popular. Man, this one's just crazy. They just didn't show up all that much for me. I'm really intrigued to see where that goes. I think a lot of it has to do with Singer. He just projects really well via steamer. Do you like any Royals against Greinke?
No, not really. You can always go to Sal Perez just because he's a catcher and he's good. Merrifield's salary has come back up a bit. Yeah, there's not a whole lot there. Like I don't think Greinke is very good anymore, but I still don't think he's terrible. 105 expected ISO to lefties this year, 186 to righties. But, like I said, outside of Salvador Perez, there's not a whole lot in this lineup.
Yeah, same page here. 318 viewers, and we're at 100 likes. That was going to be my goal to try to get you guys to bump it a little bit higher. But if we can get to like 125, I wouldn't be mad about it. Seems like a perfect opportunity to do so right now. While we have 2 games to go, Diamondbacks and Phillies. 4.3 run implied total for the Diamondbacks, 5.2 for the Phils. Humberto Castellanos going for Arizona. Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies. Yeah, I said it. Anyway, no ownership going to either pitcher, and I don't think that it should.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Castellanos threw 60 pitches July 7th. That's not particularly helpful. Guessing he was at AAA.
Please tell me more about his stats 5 weeks ago.
Right. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how deep he's going to go into this game. He threw on August 8th, he went 4 innings. August 1st, he went 5 innings. So I'm guessing you're getting like 4 to 5 innings from him here at 4K, but still not really a matchup that I'm looking to roster him.
No.
On the other side, Suarez, he's having a good year, but most of that was out of the bullpen. Still kind of interested to see exactly how his stuff plays as a starter. In his last start, he threw 82 pitches. So I do actually think he's kind of interesting at 5,700. The Diamondbacks aren't very good, and Suarez is cheap, not pulling much ownership at all. So I do have a little bit of interest in Suarez in tournaments.
Okay. We're going to talk about a guy that I like a little bit more than Suarez. I'm anxious to see your thoughts. But offense is really the name of the game in this
I agree with you on Mitch White.
Okay. Well, there you go. I would rather get to Mitch White than Suarez, and we will be talking about him in one more game. But let's talk a little bit about this Phillies offense. I have them second overall. Top Stack Tool has them second overall. Probably properly owned to slightly over-owned, depending on which batter you're looking at. But this does seem like a pretty nice place to attack. What do you want to do with the Philadelphia Phillies?
Yeah, I think it's an okay spot. Castellanos, looking at his AAA numbers, struck out about 23% of hitters, 6% walk percentage, 2 home runs per 9, but you can't really read into that because Arizona's AAA team plays in Reno, I believe, either Reno or Vegas, somewhere where the ball flies. So you can't really read into that too much. He's not likely to be very good, but I don't think he's a total gas can. So it's a good spot for Philly, but also probably going a little bit over-owned at the moment, I think.
We're on the same page. They just look like they're in a good spot, but at the same time, ownership is sort of already there. On the Diamondback side, I have them 11th. I think there's a little bit of leverage to be had here. I don't remember who we were talking about earlier, where they were like middle of the pack. I think it was the Tigers, maybe. There's just no ownership going to Suarez, so I can't really justify wanting to go to Arizona. Do you like it?
No, not really. I think Suarez is pretty good. I don't think Arizona is very good. Individually, Nick Ahmed, Kettle Marte, Carson Kelly, these guys are all fine. But in terms of a stack on the slate, I'm not really getting there.
God, I'd be more willing to put a bet down on the Diamondbacks, which doesn't make me feel all that good. But at the same time, I think this one's a little bit spread out further than it should be. Anything else for this game? No, I think that's it. Just, Philly's bats are in a pretty good spot, and I am interested in Suarez at low ownership, knowing he threw 82 pitches last start. And also, for what it's worth, in his starts this year, Suarez has struck out 23.7% of hitters. He does have a 15.8% walk percentage, 3.71 xFIP in those starts. So not sure what exactly we get from him as a starter because, he's going through the lineup more than once, but does have pretty decent stuff and has had some strikeout success so far. Closing it out, Dodgers and Pirates. 5.4 run implied total for the Dodgers was the last I saw, although there wasn't an official line up for this game before we got started. Let's see. Is there anything yet? Still nothing official. We've got Mitch White for the Dodgers, and I think that's the sort of the reason he doesn't appear to be officially announced as the starter. JT Brubaker going for the Pirates. I got Mitch White in 12% of lineups when I ran my crunch. 6K on DK, 5,800 on FanDuel. I don't expect him to go like ultra deep in this game, but to me, he's sort of the best pay down option you can find.
Yeah, I think he's similar to Suarez. A lot there will matter as far as ownership will matter a lot there, kind of which one I prefer. The thing is, like, White threw 59 pitches his last time out, whereas Suarez threw 82. So I feel more comfortable going to Suarez pitch count wise, but I think White also can pretty likely go deeper here. So it wouldn't be surprising if you got 70, 75 pitches from White in a really, really good matchup against the Pirates. So far this year at AAA, he made 5 starts, 8 total appearances, struck out 27.5% of hitters. He's made 2 starts in the majors, 16 total appearances, 23.6% strikeout percentage overall for him. So, I do like White. I think it's a good matchup against the Pirates. I would expect you're getting like 5 innings or so from him. But if there's a big ownership gap between him and Suarez, I would rather just take the lowest owned one.
Any Brubaker against the Dodgers? I couldn't even finish my sentence without laughing.
No,
I mean, he's not bad.
He's not bad at all, but pretty tough matchup against LA.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with him. This is very much a Dodgers issue, and we should talk about said Dodgers. 4th overall for me, but showing up a little tiny bit over-owned. Although when it comes to these bats, like, you get what you pay for. Do you want to roster the Dodgers? We've got them 5th in the top stack tool, showing up slightly over-owned, but how much does that matter to you?
Not a ton, especially in the context of like just getting to these guys as 3-mans or mini stacks, because the thing with Brubaker, he's actually been a pretty good pitcher overall this year. 4.02 xFIP, 23.3% strikeout percentage, but he's allowed 2 home runs per 9 innings. He's gotten a bit unlucky in terms of the power numbers. It looks like 223 actual ISO allowed to lefties, 224 to righties, compared to a 187 expected ISO to lefties and 186 to righties. But even if we assume that comes back down and he settles in around, 186, 187, that's still decent power that he's allowing. And he's facing this Dodgers team that just has power from top to bottom in their lineup. So I do like getting to them individually, mixing them in with some lower owned stacks.
Yeah, they're other than Gavin Lux, there's probably not a guy that I'm trying to avoid from this team, although Lux works as a pivot if you don't want to get that 18% ownership from Trey Turner. Do you see any value in going to the Pirates with their 3.2 run implied total?
No.
Neither do I. Anything else in this game?
Just, keep an eye on Mitch White ownership once he's officially announced.
All right, let's sum it all up then. Favorite stacks as of right now for today's slate?
Tampa Bay, Boston. I like Atlanta too.
Okay. Rays very clearly at the top of the heap for me. Phillies, Mariners, Dodgers are my 2, 3, 4, all of which going slightly over owned to me, but still in the mix. I don't have many leverage stacks, but the Braves are that big one that steps up. But they are my 9th overall. So we'll see where that all ends up as we get closer to lock. And you're going to want to tune in to the deeper dive from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Adam will be back. You want to tune in to Live Before Lock from 6 to 7. I will be back. We've got 115 likes on this bad boy. Now I need your final pitchers for today. Who stands out most to you on the mound?
Ohtani and Morton. I really like Lynn in tournaments as long as his ownership is a lot lower than everyone else in that price range.
Yeah, I think Morton's ownership is fully justified. I think Lance Lynn is going a little bit under-owned, at least as of right now. I'm happy to get to a little bit of Mitch White or Greinke, 2 guys that for right now don't have any ownership projected. Is there a pitcher you want to avoid based on ownership?
Not really.
I think now.
What'd you say?
Jack Flaherty at 30% ownership right now is an avoid for me.
I mean, I don't have an issue with Flaherty though. Like it
sure.
If I have a low owned lineup and I have 9,100 a pitcher, I have no issue going to Flaherty.
He's good. Like I wouldn't regret the play. I think he's massively overowned given everything else that's around him.
I think there's a good chance I end up with less than 30% Jack Flaherty the way ownership looks right now. But yes, if I ended up at 30%, I wouldn't care.
Okay, that's fine. That sounds good. I also have Jesus Luzardo as a bit overowned at 15%.
If he's going to be 15% owned, I just like the Atlanta stacks even more.
Yep, you and me both. All righty. Anything else you want to plug? Deep dive today, rather.
Yeah,
Sorry.
deep dive will be out in a couple of hours. Deeper dive at 5 with Eric.
There we go, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to this channel, Awesemo Odds, Awesemo Fantasy Football. Use that Blitz code. Use the WR code if you want to get into our season-long / best ball tools. It's all kinds of good stuff right now. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll see you on some of these later shows, and then we'll talk to you again tomorrow morning for another edition of the MLB Strategy Show.